All right, I have a horary example that I want to post. I am going to make a prediction, a risky one, because this chart is really hard to call. And the reason why I want to give a prediction is because I want to make it public in case I'm right or wrong. We have proof that I either got it right or I got it wrong before it happened. But also, this chart is a really good example of a deeper lesson that we can learn from astrology. So the background situation is that I started a job a couple months ago and I have been miserable. It is a low paying job and it isn't a good fit. I have been, I was without a job for a while, so I'm grateful to have anything. I'm not complaining, but it is not a happy experience. And I've been applying for other jobs. I've been putting myself out there, continuing to try for something better because I need better pay at very least. So I had an interview with a place that I'm pretty excited about yesterday, and they told me, we'll let you know on Monday who we pick. So today is Thursday. So I have the weekend basically to wait, and then I should find out on Monday. Okay. This morning, I had an incident at work that upset me, and I was crying, and I was like, I just want to get out of here. I just want to get out of here. This isn't where I want to be. And then I'm like, what if I don't get the job? Or what if I do get the job? And I was like, I need to know if I'm going to get the job. And this is a decision point because, being an astrologer and practice horary, my first impulse is like, well, let's cast a chart for it. But there are rules about when you can cast a chart when it's a legitimate chart, so to speak. And I hesitated because I'm going to find out in a few days whether I got it or not. And I should have the maturity to be fine with whatever happens, right? If I get the job, if I don't get the job, I should be able to handle it. And I am able to handle it. I know I am. But I was having an emotional moment. And this brings us to the philosophical question of looking into the future. Why do we want to know? Why do we want to know, right? I'm going to be writing a blog post a little bit deeper on this because this happens all the time. There's an anxiety about the future, about not knowing. We don't like not knowing. As humans, we like to know. Why do we need to know what's going to happen? It's a profound question. What is it doing for us, right? And what are we going to do with that knowledge when and if we have it? As far as what it's doing for us, I think that sometimes we're just curious. Sometimes we do have that anxiety that we're trying to get control of our anxiety and to feel like we can just sort of breathe a little bit. I think in some cases, trying to know the future is a way to try to control the future. Feeling like you are out of control and helpless. If you can predict the future in some sense, it sort of feels like somehow maybe you are controlling it, which isn't super logical, but there's sort of a connection there. And I think some people would say, well, if I can see what's coming, I can prepare, right? Sure. Okay. But I have seen many people using astrology in ways that I would consider to be unhealthy because their sense of looking into the future is about feeling superior to others or feeling, kind of boosting your ego, like I'm better than the other person because I can see the future. Or they become so obsessed with astrologizing everything that they're not showing up to live their actual lives. They're not there for the people around them. Everything becomes about astrology and they can't actually see in front of them. It's not making them better people. It's making them worse people. So today we have computers. We can type in a date and place and boom, we've got a chart. It's very easy to get a chart. Back in the day before computers, you had to do extensive work to cast a chart. It was a lot of math, there's a lot of writing and comparison before you even get the chart to analyze. And then there's the analysis step after that. And I think that we have lost a little bit of wisdom in the fact that everything is so easy because it feels cheap. It feels like we can just ask the heavens anything. Oh, we can just ask flippant questions like whatever. What am I going to eat tomorrow? Or stuff that doesn't really actually improve our spiritual lives. And I think that that's a mistake. I think that cheapening the act of divination, it keeps us children, keeps us like just trying to see instead of trying to be, right? Trying to find the answer instead of showing up and being the answer. Casting astrology charts in a cheap way can sometimes slip over into unhealthy observation instead of co-creation. And I was wondering that about myself. Is this an unhealthy anxiety? You know, because it's close to a full moon. I'm feeling emotional. You know, is this a legitimate question? Can I handle it? And I've gotten to be more in touch with, there's a little thing in my heart that sort of tingles when it's like, okay, go ahead and cast the chart. And I felt that. But even so, I was like, I'm not sure if I trust myself. Maybe I'm asking illegitimately, like, you know, the heavens will smack me down if I deserve it. But the reason why I wanted to know was partly peace of mind so I can prepare either way, which again, I should be able to do that without divination. I fully admit that. But then there's also, if you're getting a good horary reading, if you're getting a good astrology reading, there's always something else that the heavens will call your attention to that you probably weren't because you're so focused on this other thing. There's a qualitative piece that gets put in there. And I truly believe that these are opportunities for spiritual growth. So I cast a chart. I did it. I will say I am extremely grateful to my friend Drew for helping me because I didn't feel like I was able to be objective enough to read it. I started reading it and I was like, oh, I don't know. You know, it's hard to be objective about your own life. So I'm really grateful to have a friend help and step in. Drew, thank you. You're amazing. So here's the chart. All right, will I get the job? So there are a lot of things to consider. You always want to start with the moon. We have the moon here right on the cusp of the fifth house. The fifth house is at 9 and the moon is at 5 degrees Taurus. We have an exalted moon. That's a good sign. We like to see exalted moons. That's already a positive indicator. The moon is separating from Venus. So if you look down here on the planet strip, you can see the moon's last aspect was Venus, just a couple degrees in the past, and applying to Saturn. So separating from a trine from Venus and applying to a sextile with Saturn. And Saturn is stationing direct. It's been retrograde for a while, and it's going to be going direct pretty soon. So Saturn's about to turn around. So immediately what this tells us is that we're going from a situation that is Venusian in nature to a situation that is Saturnian in nature. It's interesting to consider that Venus is the domicile ruler of the midheaven, and Saturn is the exaltation ruler of the midheaven. So it kind of looks like you leave one job situation and you enter another job situation. Also, the fact that Saturn is stationing, it is literally standing still in the sky from our point of view. This looks like a blockage of some kind, a brick wall, something that you're trucking along and boom, there's an obstacle that you've got to get over. So already we have mixed signals here. We have an exalted moon, but it's applying to a pretty strong stationing Saturn and Saturn kind of is a planet of no. But it's a sextile. It's not a square. It would be kind of a soft landing, so to speak. But already it's like, well, the balance is sort of equal. So let's look at more testimonies. The planet that rules me would be Jupiter, because Sagittarius is rising and Jupiter rules Sagittarius. And we have Jupiter in detriment in Gemini, right on the cusp of the seventh house. We've got so many cusps in this chart. It's kind of crazy. And what that tells me when there's a lot of cusp energy is that there are things moving and changing kind of in the background. Things are shifting from one chapter to another, and the story's not settled, right? So a moon on the cusp of the fifth, we have Jupiter right on the cusp of the seventh. Jupiter's retrograde and in detriment. Okay, and then the job would be represented by the 10th house, which is in Libra, the midheaven, which is in Libra, and Venus rules Libra, and Venus is placed in the first house. So that's a testimony in favor of getting the job. If the significator for the job is placed in the house of the querent, that's one testimony that's like, yes, you've got a good chance here. We also have the sun, which is the sun is the hour ruler for the chart, and the sun is the natural ruler of bosses, authority figures, things like that. And the sun is in the 11th house, which is the house of hope and liberation from prison, is kind of a traditional model for it. So I like all of those. I like those significators, or I like those testimonies. We also have Jupiter, which rules me, trining the midheaven. Okay, so Jupiter's at 19 Gemini, the midheaven is at 14 Libra, and that makes a trine, and that's also a good sign. A sign of flowing of the energy of myself to the job, and then the flowing of the energy of the job, the ruler of the job, to myself. So that's good, right? But that moon applying to Saturn is niggling in my head, okay? I'm not sure about this. So let's look at testimonies against, okay? So one testimony that is against says that I might not get the job, is that there's no aspect between the two significators. So the significators are Venus and Jupiter, and they're not aspecting each other. They don't see each other. So even though they see the angles, right? Jupiter is trining the midheaven, and Venus is in the first house. There's still not an aspect between Venus and Jupiter, and there's not anything that, like, there's not a third planet that connects them together. Let's look down here on the strip, right? So Venus is at 3 Capricorn. Yep, there's nothing that brings them together. So that's a testimony that goes against the question. And then I already mentioned that the moon is applying to Saturn, and then another testimony is that so Gemini is on the cusp of the 7th house, and that would indicate my rivals, other people who have applied for this job. And that would be Mercury, would represent Mercury. And Mercury is here, also in detriment, and exactly opposing, well, not exactly, it's 4 degrees off, but Mercury and Jupiter are opposing each other. But Mercury has closer a sextile to the midheaven, and it's only 1 degree orb, whereas Jupiter has a what is that, a 5 degree orb, so it's a little bit farther away in orb from the midheaven. The midheaven's at 14 Libra, and Mercury's at 15 Sagittarius, so closer in orb to the midheaven. So all of this stuff is making me go, it feels kind of equal. It's like the people, as they decide, as they're making their decisions of who to hire, they've got 2 really good candidates, and they're like, I like them both, and I got to pick one, and I just don't know which one, right? And it makes it look like it's a really tough decision. So who's going to win out? Another thing we can look at is the dignities of the planets involved. So Mercury would be my opponent, and Jupiter would be me. Let's look at the dignities here. So the chart over here only tells you what's called the essential dignities, and that is placement within the signs of the zodiac. And so we see that Jupiter is in mutual reception with Mercury, which doesn't do much good because they both get the benefit of the mutual reception there. And also in mutual reception by term with Mars, which is a really minor mutual reception, but otherwise it's in detriment. So you put all of those dignities together, and it's got a total score of 2. Mercury, mutual reception with Jupiter, as I mentioned, also in mutual reception by term with Venus and by face with the moon. Again, these are really minor mutual receptions. They don't have a lot of power, but it's point value of 3. So we've got 2 versus 3. Again, we're set her right on a razor's edge. Okay, so what do? Now we look at essential dignities. No, not essential dignities. What did I say? Now we have to look at accidental dignities, and that's all the other things besides that placement within the zodiac. And I'm a huge nerd, and I actually made myself a spreadsheet to calculate this. Now I'm going to take a little tangent here because you don't usually need to calculate the essential dignities like this, because usually the chart is pretty clear. But this chart is kind of like, I don't know. So I'm calling on the accidental dignities, and I'm going to get down to the number to help me have another factor in my judgment. Okay, so we look at speed. Mercury's fast, Jupiter's retrograde. So Mercury gets 2 points, Jupiter gets 0 for speed. Mercury is free from the beams. Jupiter's also free from the beams. They each get 5 points. Mercury's direct, so it gets 4 points, and Jupiter is retrograde, so it gets -4 points. Mercury's in the 12th house, -5 points. Jupiter is in the 7th house, it gets 4 points. Mercury is occidental, which is favorable for Mercury, so it gets 2 points. Jupiter is oriental, which is favorable for Jupiter, it gets 2 points. And then these are for aspects like if they're conjoining a fixed star, or if they're besieged or something like that, which doesn't apply to either of them. So we get Mercury 8 points, Jupiter 7 points. Again, it's just so close. Oh my God. Oh my God. So we end up with a total of Mercury being 2 points higher than Jupiter. 2 points is not a lot. It's barely. So if we just went based on dignity scores, looks like Mercury's going to win. That looks possible, but the only thing that I'm thinking of, though, is you can't just look at numbers themselves. Okay, you also have to look at the qualitative nature of the chart and what does it speak to. Because Mercury is placed in the 12th house, that's the opponent. Like the 12th house doesn't relate to a question about careers. You know, the 12th house has other representations, whereas Venus ruling the midheaven and being placed in the 1st house is an indicator of sort of the job being given to me. Whereas the other, my rival, doesn't have that sort of placement, the house placement part of it. One way that the 12th house might speak to the situation. So the 12th house is about, it can indicate like hidden enemies or like a deception. It can sometimes indicate, deception. And so it makes me wonder if this person, you know, like they used AI to write their resume, or they are inflating their resume somehow. They're not actually fully telling the truth because they're trying to, you know, promote themselves, and they're using sort of backhanded ways. Or maybe they know somebody, or, you know, there's some sort of thing going on behind the scenes that I can't control, that would be working against me. Not much I can do about that, though. Usually 12th house stuff, not a whole lot you can do about it. Okay, so I have to make a call. And then what happens here is that this brings me back to the question I asked at the beginning. Why do you need to know? Really, why? And this is something that I'm going to have to sit with and meditate on and ask myself, do I trust the universe? Do I trust myself to be okay no matter what happens? I pulled the chart because I was in a moment of anxiety and I lost my faith. I lost my trust that I was going to be okay. And the chart, by not directly making it obvious and answering the question, instead forced me to look at myself and say, why do you not trust? Why do you not trust yourself? Why do you not trust the universe? And that's really the answer to this question, is you're going to be okay no matter what. I think that's what this exalted moon is saying. Overall, the moon rules the situation overall. You have to believe that it's going to be okay, whether or not you get the job. This sounds like a cop-out. If you're a skeptical person, you're like, oh, you're just trying not to answer the question because you don't want to be on the record. Hang on, I will get there. I will make a call. But I just wanted to explain, first of all, why this particular call is so difficult to make. There's some charts that are really clear. But this one, it looked like the point of having the chart was to bring me to a place of spiritual growth. There are two other things about the chart. See, this is what happens when you do an astrology chart. There's always more than just the answer to the question. There's more that you need to focus on. The first is that the moon is on the cusp of the fifth house, and this puzzled me because I wasn't asking a question about anything related to fifth house matters. But there's another way that it's speaking to me, which is don't forget your kids, because I have kids, and make sure that that you're checking in with them. You just need to focus your attention on them for a little while. Okay, noted. Yes, I will. And then another thing is with the moon applying to Saturn, and Saturn rules the second house of finances. Okay. I mentioned I got this job after a period of being unemployed for a while, and my savings account was just getting lower and lower, and I was getting real nervous. I finally got this job, but it was a low paying job. And I am stressed about finances. I'm not making enough money. What this chart seems to be saying is that Saturn is stationing retrograde. My financial situation, because Saturn rules my second house, is turning around. It's going to get better. Whether I get the job or not, something good is going to happen financially, and I'm going to be okay. Saturn is turning around. It's right there. You're going to be fine. Okay. It's a sextile to Saturn. You got to work for it, but it's not a square, and Saturn is turning around. So I hope this is a good lesson. Now I'm going to make a call because I want to be on the record making a call. I think I'm going to get the job, but I think there's going to be a delay. I think it's going to be a real tough call for them. I think they're going to need to extend it out a little bit longer. There's stuff going on behind the scenes. I am expecting on Monday not to hear anything, and it'll be later than Monday, maybe even after Thanksgiving. It's a tough call. I might be wrong. But hopefully, if I am wrong, you'll see why. If you see anything else in here and you want to make a comment before Monday, now's your chance. But here we go.